Rowan. Today is Juneteenth. Now, Juneteenth is a holiday that started out being celebrated in Texas, mostly by black people, and it was recently made into a national holiday. It celebrates the announcement of the Emancipation Proclamation in Texas. See, the Emancipation Proclamation was issued in May of 1863, but it wasn't announced in Texas until June 19th of 1865, 3 months after the end of the Civil War. Now, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation after the Battle of Antietam. And he said, all of the slaves in the areas under revolt are free, which meant that the army, as it advanced south, would go and free all of the slaves that they found. All of the slaves that they found as they were marching south were freed. Now, because communications were what they were, because even after the end of the Civil War, the Union Army didn't have full control over everything, it took 3 months after the peace treaty was signed for the announcement to be made in Texas. It was made in Galveston, Texas, and the announcement reads as follows. Headquarters District of Texas, Galveston, Texas, June 19th, 1865. General Orders. Number 3. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This includes an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. By order of Major General Granger, F.W. Emory, Major A.A. General. So, the Union Army rolled into Galveston, big port town. I mean, Galveston was huge at this time. I mean, it was the biggest city in Texas, believe it or not. And now it's just this little nothing next to Houston. But that was because of hurricane, and that may be another story. Anyway, so Galveston was this huge major city. And the army rolled in and said, okay, we're in charge. These are the rules. And General Order number 3 was one of them. And that pronounced that all the slaves were free. And the idea was that the slaves were free and they could continue working for their master, or they can go wherever they want. But it wasn't going to be we're going to support you sitting around doing nothing. It wasn't here's what you get. It's okay, you are now free. You can do what you want, but it might make sense to stay where you are. So Texas was the last place that was formally taken over by the Union Army after the Civil War. And then Reconstruction, which was a limiting of the rights of people in the South. Everybody had limited rights in the South during the period of Reconstruction, which ran for another 20 to 30 years after the end of the Civil War. So you had the Civil War ended, and then you had the last slaves finally told they were free. Then you had the constitutional amendment which ended slavery, because there were still some slaves like up north and in other places, but in general, after the Civil War, all of the slaves were pretty much free. They just needed to be told, hey, you're free, you can go now. So Juneteenth celebrates that day. It's sort of a contraction of June 19th. Now, a lot of people haven't heard of this. A lot of black people hadn't heard of this until recently. I heard of it 30 years ago in high school. I heard about it in history class. It's like, okay, Juneteenth. So that's, I heard about it in high school. It's like I grew up knowing about it. And, you live in a time where now it's a national holiday, which is really kind of cool. Anyway, that is Juneteenth.